Before we begin the video, I just wish to warn you that this video will contain subjects that will be disturbing to some viewers and deeply triggering to others. This video deals in themes of sexual assault, child exploitation, abuse, mental damage via abuse, and other such subjects that may be deeply troubling to hear, or God forbid, bring back horrid memories. If this video sounds like something that will hurt you emotionally or psychologically, then please, look away. What is the worst crime you can think of? Whatever you picked, I'm assuming it has something to do with violence. Violence towards another constitutes many of the most abhorrent crimes committed, with maybe one exception being theft under exceptional circumstances. Now, what about violence towards the most innocent and dependent members of our society, conducted by those whom the person is meant to trust above all others? Well then, you have this song, sung by Miku, and made by someone who is infamous for these types of stories, Kikuo, the person behind Aishite, 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 and Hitogari. His songs are steeped in symbolism as much as pain. Here is one of the more horrifying examples. This is Gomenne Gomenne, or in English, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. The song starts off with a bang, as we hear Miku sing how someone is, well, to put it in her own words, opens my ribs and drinks my soup. As we can see, this song does not mess around, as we already have been exposed to a disturbing scene that carries with it many horrifying connotations and underlying subtexts. But we'll get into that later, as I doubt the girl is actually having her ribs torn open and some kind of soup being sucked from her body. The words then display some kind of twisted intimacy between Miku's character and whoever the other person is. We'll later find out that he is her father. This goes into what I said earlier about the song not messing around and the abuse about one you're meant to trust. Before too long, we see what can only be described as an emaciated child with dead eyes and a pained smile on her face. When I see this image that carries with it what I can only describe as a lifetime of pain, something else really jumps out at me. That being the way her body is positioned, with her seemingly pulling off her skin to reveal her ribs. Which almost looks as how a prostitute would show off her body to a potential client. This is further exemplified when we take into account where she's standing, which seems to be a street corner with graffiti on the wall, giving us some idea of the child's situation. As we get to the first beat drop, the lyrics really take a turn, as before it was disgusting, but simply buried under a mountain of metaphors and ambiguity, and you can listen to this song not without discomfort, but with a slight tingling in that dark recess in your brain which tells the brave to intervene and the common to run when it sees a scene of horror. However, at this point, that same part of your brain will be screaming out with these lyrics, which I refuse to say out loud due to just how disgusting they really are. This is set against a type of techno music that wouldn't be out of place at a Skrillex concert. But here, it is in stark contrast to the themes of this song. While singing this, the girl's voice turns demonic and angry, as if a little part of herself sees this for the crimes against nature that it really is. But after a while, her voice returns to normal, and she engages in a deeply harrowing kind of self-deprecation, that devalues her body and her wants. However, there does seem to be hope for her, as she says how she's starting to realize that, well, maybe this is such a good idea. Putting it mildly, I guess, but there is someone looking out for her. Someone she calls Oni-san, or just Big Brother. I doubt he's her actual brother, however. Just someone who's trying to keep her safe, it seems. But we see this self-deprecation when she states that she's a bad girl for running away from Papa. Put in her own words. And this is when we hear the title of the song over and over again, which is in fact the girl apologizing for running away from her abusive father. The very title of the song is a symptom of her abuse and Stockholm Syndrome, and also her misguided love. We also see her apologizing for falling in love with someone other than Papa, once again in her own words, showing that this abusive relationship is not just built on physical violence, but sexual violence also. Later, we once again hear the demonic voice, which seems to be the voice that she uses when she describes the violence happening to her. I also think it's time to explain the reasons as to why I think the actions of her father are described in such a way. I believe that in her young mind, these actions are not of a sexual nature. It's something else, as her mind is too young to comprehend what exactly is going on, so she rationalizes it, equates what her father is doing with food, leading to the heavy use of subtext. And there's a small part of her that is angry. Despite what may be years, if not a lifetime, of gaslighting and abuse, making her think that her father really does love her despite all the pain he puts her through. Or maybe that's why she thinks he loves her. It seems that the girl now equates the kind of abuse she suffered as love, in a similar way to what we see in Hitogari. However, here we see the line, "gulps down my amniotic fluid," and "he breaks open my hard stomach." It seems that her Oni-san is not quite as innocent as we first thought, as he is also sexually abusing her, albeit more gentle, but once again, nowhere near free of sin. I honestly believe that he simply saved her so he can exploit her instead. However, without the pain that she's become accustomed to, and without the rough hand of her father, which is putting it mildly, I suppose, she runs away from Oni-san into the, well, loving, if you can't see my sarcasm, forgive me, claws of her father. However, she states that she still does not love him, but she believes that he will be the only one to ever love her. This is a very common tactic used by abusers, where they isolate the person who is being abused and make them emotionally dependent on the abuser. The girl also continues self-deprecation, saying how no one loves her but the sick lunatic who she is forced to call her father. Making this, from what my limited knowledge on the subject, can make out to be one of the most accurate depictions of abuse and gaslighting I've ever seen in film, TV, or in this case music. When she returns home and waits for her father, we see that he came home with a few guests. as he had a feeling she would return. I'm gonna give you another warning. This is when things get really disturbing. So if you don't think you can continue, then please stop watching. Because even I feel dirty writing and now saying this. Okay. The girl is implied to have been murdered by these sickos. As she says that they want to eat my collapsed body until the end. And so they do. But there's something else that really makes me sick to my stomach. Almost to the point where I'm debating uploading this. As despite the pain, her mind has been so damaged. She's almost happy as she says, "My heart is satisfied." Then we see the screen fade to black as the brutality of the act has killed her. My videos tend to detail the darker sides of humanity. As in the West, our sensibilities to these kinds of events are simply to not acknowledge them, many of the times. In England, Jimmy Savile, one of the most popular radio and TV personalities to ever touch the airways. During his time, it was every child's dream to be on a show, Jim Will Fix It. But then, he would turn that dream into a nightmare. Protected by a group of elites, which by some accounts include the Prime Minister, and on top of his very generous donations to multiple charities, and his high up position in the BBC made him, for lack of a better words, untouchable. His influence was so vast that he even became the de facto head of Broadmoor Hospital, a place where some of England's most criminally insane dwell. Savile's head was such a dark and twisted place that a common joke among the doctors and nurses was that, quote, the lunatics had taken over the asylum. Now, if you're interested, I would definitely recommend looking more into it. It's disturbing and disheartening, but you're watching my content. So I'm guessing that won't bother you much. I'm going off script now, and I'll leave you with these final remarks. The world can be a terrible place. More often than not, if you look under the surface, it is a terrible place. People are sick. According to Sigmund Freud, many of the things that go on in society are bent around sexual desire. And in very certain people, what he would refer to as the id, the animal part of our brain, takes over all else. The id is where our deepest, darkest desires lie. It's a part of us all. We can't escape it. The only thing keeping it at bay are our own morals and the morals of society. But for those who exist on the outskirts of society, for those who have found a way to silence the conscience that tells them to stay their violent hand, there is nothing to stop them from performing these acts. Nothing. And for these people who exist outside our society are the ones that will do the most damage to at the end. Thank you for watching.